I don't know. I'd like to see Robert Whittaker win this fight, maybe win another one, and then get another crack if it is DDP. Unfortunately, I do think you're right. He's not going to get a shot against Israel Adesanya for a third shot. I mean, that would have something crazy would have to happen. Speaking of Kelvin Gastelum, he's also on this card, minus 250 versus Daniel Rodriguez, 2-1 on the underdog. Is there a fighter in Kelvin Gastelum that's more feast or famine? Like sometimes he gets in fights and he's going for ankle picks and he's trying to wrestle. And then sometimes he gets into a fight like he did against Izzy where it should have been fight of the year. I'm excited. Like I always get excited for Gastelum fights.
Yeah, he really is the ultimate wild card. And I think we've all thought like, all right, is this, ultimate fighter Kelvin Gastelum, or is this going to be Israel Adesanya Kelvin Gastelum, or is he going to be somebody who's not quite what he was or not what he thought he could be? I mean, the record is really, really dicey over, the last 5 years between him. I mean, looking at 2-6 with wins over Chris Curtis and Ian Hanesh. Like it's a pretty dicey record.
Fight. Shouldn't have lost to Darren Till fight.
Yeah, all right. So he give that one to him.
Beat up on Adesanya.
But he didn't win?
Lost the fight. No, you're right. Lost the fight. I'm just saying it's fun. No, he didn't win. You're right.
I'm a little surprised, especially that heavy of an underdog, because I know that Rodriguez coming off a couple of tough losses to Magny and Ian Gary, but I don't know. I have a tough time paying that kind of a price on Kelvin Gastelum just because he's Kelvin Gastelum. Like that's just that to me where I'm just gonna be like, I could find if you're gonna give me like 2-1 that Kelvin Gastelum's gonna lose, that's basically been his career. So I'll take the value in that with D-Rod.
Funny enough, you could say all that same stuff you just said about the next guy on the card, Johnny Walker. When he's good, he's great, but we've also seen him get knocked out, and when he gets knocked out, it is in highlight fashion. I like betting on Johnny Walker. I won a bunch of money on him. Remember a couple of years ago, I took Johnny Walker by sub, and he ended up choking the dude out. He's fighting Volkan Ozdemir, so it's another shot to grab a limb because that guy is really tall. This is basically an even money fight. Ozdemir right now, the slight favorite to bet MGM at even money. Johnny Walker at minus 120. Where's your money going next Saturday?
I think I'm going to go Ozdemir. Johnny Walker did have a little bit of a resurgence there, but, brutal loss to Ankalaev, who, look, no shame in that. Ankalaev's really good. But I just think that he kind of he ended the hype train there a little bit. Volkan Ozdemir is as solid as they come. It's for me, just looking at this one with Johnny Walker being the favorite, I'm like, I think that's just kind of a name recency thing as far as like maybe the more complete fighter. I think I'd go Ozdemir, even if he's been around a little bit longer.
A few different times I bought into that name, and it's worked out well for me, and it hasn't. But when he wins and he shakes those hips, or if he does the worm, when he takes the microphone, it's just fun to bet on Johnny Walker, dude. What do you mean you're going to bet on Volkan Ozdemir? The big boys are all over this card. Sergey Pavlovich versus friend of the show, Alex Volkov. Right now, Volkov's the underdog at plus 175. Pavlovich at minus 215. I know you talk about how scary Sergey Pavlovich is. Are we like 1,000% sure that he is a, let's say, top 5-10 fighter in his weight class? Are we sure of that?
I think there's fair questions. Especially the way that he lost to Tom Aspinall. Like, that's the first time we've seen him like that in a very, very long time. We're talking like 5 years since he lost to Overeem, so it's been a while since he's tasted defeat. I think there are fair questions because Volkov's been on a bit of a tear, and Volkov is not a guy who has a ton of weaknesses. He, you basically will go into a lot of Pavlovich fights and you'll be like, yeah, but like, who's going to mess with the size of this guy? And then you look at a guy like Volkov, and Volkov's 6'7". He is a moose. Strangely enough, though, Pavlovich, I'm actually looking at this, I'm pretty surprised by this. Pavlovich still has the reach advantage, which is a little bit odd for having yeah, he has a 4-inch reach advantage despite having a 4-inch height disadvantage. It's kind of weird. But Volkov doesn't have a ton of weaknesses. I mean, the guy is as solid as they come. And I do think it's fair to have those questions. Pavlovich, that was a brutal loss, brutal loss to Tom Aspinall. and there's no shame in that, but you do have to wonder, like, what is he going to look like coming back from that? I think I'm still going to take him by knockout because he's still the scariest thing I think I've seen this side of Francis. But, not an easy guy to put away, because the last time that Volkov got knocked out, it was that Hail Mary shot from Derek Lewis. Other than that, it usually goes to the cards if you beat him.
I had to Google image those guys to see if he either had Tyrannosaurus Rex arms or if the other guy just had really long arms. Like, it just didn't make any sense. And Volkov's arms appear to be basically normal length, like as long as you would expect for a guy that tall. Sergey has these octopus arms, dude, that go all the way down to his ankles. What is going on? I mean, no wonder that guy is so scary, because he's that big, that heavy, and somehow he's got that type of reach. What a freak. And then also Nasrat Haqparast is on this card against Jared Flash Gordon. Jared Gordon's always an underdog, and I feel like he always makes me money. Same thing in this fight. Haqparast is a heavy favorite now that I look at it at BetMGM, minus 225. Jared Gordon at plus 195, 2-1 looks pretty good to me.
Yeah, and he's you're talking about a guy right now who, Paddy Pimblett fight notwithstanding, we all thought that he won that fight, so the guy probably should be on a 3-fight win streak right now. So you're probably getting a guy that's not being valued quite the right way, because people really thought, that really, we look at that Paddy Pimblett matchup and that was kind of the turning point for Paddy Pimblett, right? Like, people are big time in the prove it mode for Paddy the Batty, because they feel like Jared Gordon got screwed in that fight.
Yeah, you're one of those people. You always want to see more from the Batty. Also, some other fights that got announced. We talked about this a little bit. Brian Ortega, Diego Lopez at 303. Jamal Hill is out at 303. Man, all sorts of guys pulling out of fights. Olberg's still in. He's fighting Anthony Lionheart-Smith. You want to talk about a guy that's game to fight anybody, anytime on short notice? That's Anthony Smith. I just don't think it's a good matchup against Olberg.
Yeah, look, it's been he's another one where, like, with Anthony Smith, he's just the vet where you're like, all right, what's the level of guy he can beat? And then, like, what's the level of guy that is just too much for him these days? Now, last time, against Petrino, he took that advice from Dustin Poirier. He jumped the gilly, got himself a nice little victory to get back in the win column. But, I do think that I think Olberg's a tough test, man. That's a tough thing, and especially to step in, late change on it as well is not an easy place for Anthony Smith to go. But I do think, look, this is going to be a competitive fight. I have a hard time believing you're going to completely wipe the floor with Anthony Smith.
Where are you going to put your money, BT? We still got a ways for it, a couple of weeks away from UFC 303. Ortega now on the card. Brian Ortega versus Diego Lopez. I never bet against T-City.
Man, Diego Lopez has looked like a monster, dude. I mean, he really looks like he looks like in this division, like he is. There's a reason I think, like, they have the faith to put him on this kind of a showcase against T-City, and he's looked just like an absolute killer as of late. His three straight wins. He's been getting finishes. He's a 3-fight finish streak, and with Ortega, look. His last performance against Jair was really, really impressive, especially off of how he took 2 years off. I think I'm going to go with Diego Lopez just because of what a streak he's been on, but that's a great co-main.
1 hour in the book. Coming up next, we're talking a lot of boxing. Get a chance to hear from David Benavidez. We got a couple of big fights tonight. We're going to tell you who wins on the BetQL network.